Well, good evening. How are you doing today? I hope your Monday has gone well, and I hope you had a great weekend. We have an exciting show for you today. I like to say we're going to get down to earth and get dirty, if you will. The topic today is grounding, and I will be leading our esteemed panel on this interesting topic that I found to be very fascinating. I recently have been studying this concept and have been applying it in my practice over the last several months. And so we're going to talk about the concept of grounding, or earthing as it's also known as, and how it has many, many benefits to our health. So I'd like to get started. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our guest. Isosa is our resident nutritionist who counsels patients around the world regarding their health and wellness. Isosa, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
Just fine, thank you. And Celeste, good evening. How are you doing today? Celeste, our resident pediatrician. She's saving the world of our kids and trying to prevent them from having chronic illnesses such as my patients with, heart disease and diabetes and the like. And so, how's your day going so far?
It's good.
Did you guys get out in your backyard in your bare feet and get dirty today yet? Or are you saving that to after the show? So the topic of grounding, as I said before, I think is a fascinating topic. And what I want to do is get into the concepts of grounding with our show. And, I've been applying this recently with my patients. And one thing I'll tell them, so I need you to, go out in your backyard, take your shoes off and exercise, or just walk around your backyard or do 10 jumping jacks and do that for about, at least 30 minutes a day to upwards of 2 hours a day, rain or shine. Okay. And so they give me a funny look and some sort of shake their head reluctantly. But what I want to share with the audience today is really the importance of grounding and what is it. So let me just pull up my slides here. And the concept of getting down to earth is one that I sort of, use part jokingly, but it's really an important thing. And as I, get into this area of natural healing, if you will, I find that, improving your health is more about doing some of the basic fundamental things that we tend to overlook. We use a lot of plant-based nutrition and detox, and those things are wonderful, but there are other aspects of our health that I think is very beneficial. Of course, sleep and rest and relaxation. But I think there's some specific things we can do that helps bring these things on. And grounding is one of those things that I think is very beneficial. So, what is this getting down to earth concept, and what is grounding and so on? So let me just go through the concept of what is grounding. What I'd like to do is share a short video with you that I think gives a nice little overview of what grounding is. So let's share this right now.
So we all know the sun's energy is crucial for good health. But do you know that the Earth's energy is too? When we make direct contact with the surface of the Earth, our bodies receive a charge of energy that makes us feel better fast. This is called earthing. You see, throughout history, people were always naturally absorbing the Earth's energy. But in today's world, we live most of our lives inside. And even when we do go outside, we usually wear shoes, which prevent us from connecting. So, of course, we often feel drained and achy, because we go days or even years without ever touching the Earth. But it doesn't have to be this way. You can start receiving the benefits of earthing by going barefoot outside. The more time, the better. This alone can be life-changing, and it's free. And if you love feeling great while earthing outdoors, now you can start earthing indoors too. Simply connect your earthing product into the third hole of an outlet, which directly connects to the existing ground rod of your home. This connection lets you safely and conveniently receive Earth's energy from wherever you are, whether that be working or playing, and especially while you're sleeping. Because while earthing, you'll sleep deeper, feel more refreshed in the morning, and wake up looking terrific. And the best part? Anyone can benefit from this life-changing discovery. It's a no-brainer. Start earthing today to look better, feel better, and sleep better. Guaranteed. So we all...
So anyway, a nice little synopsis in terms of how earthing can be beneficial, earthing or grounding, that is, can be beneficial. But also what I like about that video is it gives a little bit of perspective because it outlines the fact that historically we've been individuals who normally work outdoors and interact outdoors and live outdoors and the like. And as modern civilization progressed, we became more separated from nature, and that brought about these chronic illnesses and the like, in addition to other aspects of our lifestyle. And so, grounding is one of those things that I think we need to look at and consider as one of our perfect part of our health analysis, or part of our health practices. But as medical people, scientists, we want to say, okay, what's the science behind this? Is this some, wacky thing that Dr. Montgomery is coming up with yet again? And perhaps, but let's just look at some of the science behind it. So what's the physiology of grounding? So what I like to do is understand the basic physiology of some of the basic science behind it. If you look at grounding from an electrical standpoint, TV cables, have to be grounded. Electrical devices in general have to be grounded. So TVs, cell phones, or the like, these things have to be grounded because if you get electrical interference, then it interrupts the signal. So, many people have had a TV that's, you see static, and part of what has to erase a lot of this interference is the actual grounding of the electrical device. So, this is a technology that is well understood. In fact, that's why you have a grounding port in your electrical connections in your home. So all homes are designed with grounding wires, and it wasn't designed for for grounding sheets, if you will, but rather for our electrical devices, because they need to be grounded as well, because they're subject to the same electrical interference that our bodies are. So it's an important aspect of the technology. So the human body requires grounding to maintain electrical stability. The human body is an electrical being, and so we're electrical entities. And how do I know that? Well, we get EEGs, we get EKGs, and other electrical measurements for electrical signals that's coming from our bodies. And so we require on stable electrical signal and electrical pathways in the same way any other electrical device would, say a TV or radio or the like. So to have perfect data transfer between our body organs and interaction with our circadian rhythm, it's important that we have electrical stability, and grounding provides that. Now, our environment, as I've alluded to earlier, has become increasingly filled with electrical noise. We're sitting around computers, even as I speak, cell phones and many other electrical devices. We're talking about 5G towers and other types of EMF type signals, Wi-Fi that's passing through our environment. We're subject to electrical interference that goes through. In fact, these electrical signals can be measured in our bodies, and so I'll show you on some slides with that. But what this slide shows is in an ungrounded situation, just like cables, electrical cables that are not grounded, they're subject to electrical interference that's in the environment, just like our body is. And so that electrical interference can cause a disruption in the normal electrical signals and waveform that has to go through, in this case, the device, or in our case, our bodies. When you ground these devices, it creates an electrical shield. So there's somewhat of a shielding of this electrical interference, where this electrical interference is grounded and it's not able to create interference of electrical signals in the case of the device or in case for our human bodies. So the basic physiological aspect of grounding is well founded in science and electrical conduction aspects that we're pretty much aware of. So if you look at other aspects of grounding, so what are the fundamentals? Well, I like to look at three basic concepts, the three basic areas that grounding affects. Regulation of the circadian rhythm, reduce inflammation, and also a general antioxidant effect. So if we talk about regulation of a circadian rhythm, what is the circadian rhythm? Circadian rhythm, from the Latin circa, meaning around, and diem, day, around the day. It's really a 24-hour cycle where precise biochemical reactions occur, hormonal productions occur, and the like. And so we see this change in cyclical biochemical reactions within our bodies that is affected by this, body clock. This is an endogenous clock that goes around the day. The other clocks, if you look at biorhythms, biological rhythms in general, there are other clocks that are weekly and annually and the like. So circadian rhythm is part of a more of a global biological clock that we interact with. And these biological clocks, the circadian rhythm and other biological clocks, are in sync with nature. I mean, there's, our Earth has a 24-hour cycle and a yearly cycle and the like, and our bodies have a similar interaction there. So there's a circadian rhythm that's affected. There are trillions of biochemical reactions that are likely affected by the circadian rhythm. We understand hormonal regulations in some extent that are affected by regulatory systems. One such hormone we're going to talk about in more detail is cortisol. Has a pretty well-described circadian rhythm. And so the cortisol is our main stress hormone that affects brain metabolism, among other things. And so here's a study that was done. There were 12 subjects taken, and they had complaints of sleep dysfunction, pain, stress. They were grounded during their sleep in their own bed. So they were provided these grounding sheets. And it was self-administered. Collections of their saliva, and they collected around the clock. 11 of the 12 participants reported falling asleep more quickly, and all 12 reported waking up fewer times at night. Grounding the body at night during sleep hours also appears to positively affect morning fatigue levels, daytime energy, and nighttime pain. So you see this graph on here. And of the 12 subjects, you see a wide variation of the diurnal pattern of cortisol. So if you measure cortisol level throughout the day from 8 p.m. to 4 p.m., normally you're supposed to see a peak at 8 a.m. and you're supposed to see a nadir around midnight. But you see some people have little mini peaks around midnight, and their peaks are low and after 8 a.m., et cetera. So it's a wide disparaging flow, and he had super peaks in some people at 8 a.m. So after this is baseline, after about 6 weeks of grounding, you saw a normalization over the group of this diurnal pattern of cortisol. So here you see the grounding having an effect on the circadian rhythm aspects of cortisol production. And we know that, abnormal cortisol levels can be associated with, as presented here, sleep, stress. Many individuals over time can have adrenal gland dysfunction as a result of this. And so just with 6 weeks of grounding, we saw an improvement of this condition. What about the antioxidant effects? This is, we talk about antioxidants a lot. And so it's important to understand, well, what are antioxidants and what are free radicals? Individuals talk about, well, you need more antioxidants in your diet. Well, antioxidants are electron-rich substances, and they can prevent this and slow the damage of cells that is caused by free radicals. Free radicals are unstable molecules, and typically free radicals are molecules that have unpaired electrons that makes them unstable, so they bounce around within tissue sites and can damage, certain parts of the cell, including cell walls, DNA, or the like. And so this process that's caused by, the damage, contributes to oxidation and accelerated aging, chronic disease, or the like. So here you have the free radical, which is unstable. And the source of free radical, we know bad food, stress, EMF, electrical radiation, but certain metabolism, normal metabolic processes create free radicals. So, even if we lived in what we thought is the perfect environment, the whole process of living and metabolizing and turning over cells and tissue creates free radicals. So free radicals could be considered to be sort of waste material, if you like, which is part of our own metabolism and part of our own living process. And the increased amount of free radicals could be brought about if we're leaving a life that's, not as healthy. So we may be smoking or eating lots of junk food or not getting rest or have, lots of EMF in our environment. So that can increase the number of free radicals, which can accelerate the aging process. And so antioxidants are important for this. So free radicals cause damage. As I said, you look here at this graph, there are many ways: UV lights, as I said, ionizing radiation, air pollution. There are many things that we can control, but many things we cannot control. So it's part of our life, but there are things that we have to do within to help control some of the environmental factors that we don't have control over. Here you see a little cartoon as Mr. Free Radical is stealing an electron from Mr. Healthy Atom. And so Mr. Healthy Atom will then become unstable, and then, that leads to tissue damage. So this progressive stage of a normal cell being attacked by free radicals, and then the cell with oxidative stress. We talk about individuals who are at risk for chronic illnesses. We're in this pandemic, and who are the patients at risk for dying from coronavirus, COVID-19? Well, we know that the elderly people with associated chronic illnesses. Well, part of the accelerated aging process, there's a buildup of reactive oxygen species due to excess free radicals. This increases the amount of oxidative stress. So the body is there with a lot of oxidative stress. The immune system is suppressed or abnormal. So then you get, a stimulator of illness such as a viral infection or the like, and then it can trigger an acceleration of an inflammatory process, an acceleration of illness or sickness. So this whole process of oxidative stress buildup is an important problem. So antioxidants are important. Why? Because they stabilize this process. So if you're living in a condition, you have a lot of, reactive oxygen species. There's a lot of, process going on with oxidative stress. Your organs are failing or are compromised. You have a situation where you develop heart disease, cancer, and other conditions. Well, you need antioxidants to come in and help reverse this process, decrease the amount of oxidative stress, and improve your overall wellness. So free radicals are there. So antioxidants come and counter the effects of free radicals. And like, so they're good sources of stabilizing the overall condition. So in essence, how do antioxidants work? Very simple. Antioxidant is, as I mentioned earlier, is an electron-rich substance, which simply donates an electron to a free radical, which has an unpaired electron. So once that free radical gets an electron donated from the antioxidant, then things settle down. The free radical is no longer unstable. It no longer floats around and causes damage within the cell and tissue milieu. So what are good sources of antioxidants? Well, there are two good ones that I want to point out. Plant foods, my favorite subject. We put our patients on plant-based nutritional regimen. And individuals who may be in the audience who've done a raw nutritional detox, they know how this antioxidant process works, because what we do, we put you on a raw detox. We do two things fundamentally. One, we put you on high amounts of antioxidants. Two, we totally remove the dietary sources of free radicals. And so what happens is when we remove the dietary sources of free radicals, we don't remove all sources of free radicals. As I said, there's some environmental factors that are there that we don't totally remove. But what we found is that most people contribute the greatest percentage of their free radical sources from the bad food they eat. So we remove that big load of free radicals and give you large amounts of antioxidants through raw fruits and vegetables only. You get a detox effect. The body starts to heal, blood pressure comes down, your sleep pattern improves, and so on and so forth. And so fruits, vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, herbs, spices, cacao all serve as good sources of antioxidants that can neutralize these free radicals. But what's another source? Well, it's below your feet, and it's the earth. And so the topic of the day is that how can we use the earth as a major antioxidant? As I said before, major underlying mechanism by which an antioxidant works is by donating an electron to a free radical that has an unpaired electron. So the earth has limitless amounts, or unlimited amounts, I should say, of electrons. So when you walk on the earth with bare feet, you're getting lots of electrons that's floating through your body. And these electrons are going and finding free radicals and stabilizing these free radicals, and then bringing about this antioxidant effect. So in addition to the earlier point, which was, the grounding effect and intercepting electrical interference, when you're on the earth or you're being grounded, then you're receiving electrons, which is also coming in and providing an antioxidant effect. So a very important process. So there's a reduction of inflammation. What is inflammation? Well, it's primarily caused when the immune system reacts to a pathogen or damaged cells. Neutrophils are brought to the site of the pathogen or damaged cells. They encapsulate the cell of the pathogen. They release reactive oxygen molecules. As I said earlier, alluded to briefly, reactive oxygen species are helpful. I mean, we have our own immune system, and you can think of these reactive oxygen species as bullets in a gun. And so these reactive oxygen species are used to shoot and kill or destroy either pathogens or damaged cells. So there's a plus benefit of having reactive oxygen species. And when you look at the sum total of things, you want a balance of antioxidants and a reactive oxygen species. So it's not like you want to have zero reactive oxygen species, but you want to have enough, and they're controlled within the guns or the holsters of your neutrophils, not just floating around everywhere just to cause damage. So when there is a pathogen, you get a bug, your immune system goes to that site. It then starts shooting off these reactive oxygen species to cause damage to the pathogen or damage to the damaged cell, which needs to be destroyed and gotten rid of. However, you don't want this process to go on unchecked. So you can theoretically have leftover oxygen molecules or reactive oxygen species that can cause further damage. So a healthy way to stabilize these is to have a process by which you're donating electrons and squelching this problem. So you have high antioxidant diet. You can also have grounding with the earth, and these free electrons from grounding can also be coming in on a regular basis. An unhealthy way these molecules are stabilized is that they cause further damage to tissue, remaining healthy tissue. So let's say you get an infection, whatever it is, a lung infection, and so you get a little pneumonia. Your neutrophils go there, they kill the pathogen. If you're not in a situation where you have a lot of antioxidants, either through your diet or through grounding, this process can get worse. And so somebody with pneumonia can have a bigger pneumonia, get into ARDS, and they have to go into the hospital because the immune system is overactive. And instead of just a little pneumonia that's then squelched, the bugs are squelched, you get an overreactive immune system because you have all of these reactive oxygen species, and so they're just going berserk. And so you go from a pneumonia to ARDS to sepsis, and so your whole body is inflamed. Where if you had decreased oxidative stress and balanced amount of antioxidants, this limited infection would be kept just to the lung, and the body would fight it off, kill the pathogen, and then the extra reactive oxygen species would be stabilized, and then everything is quiet. You get your little cough, and you go about your business. But in a situation where you get a pneumonia, whether it's due to coronavirus or some bacteria, this pneumonia can escalate to something that's a systemic illness that can cause widespread damage. So that's why it's important to improve your overall health, i.e. improve your antioxidant levels, decrease the amount of oxidative stress, because that allows this process to be controlled. So here's an example of inflammation. What is inflammation? We talked about it. If you look at the diagram, here's thermogram of a patient that has inflammation in the back. It's on the left. And after grounding, you see the amount of red that goes away and the inflammation is decreased. Similarly, you have inflammation in the leg here. This could be due to an injury or arthritis, whatever the case is. After grounding, this inflammation goes down. So we see directly in this scenario how grounding can serve as an anti-inflammatory process through its mechanism of reducing oxidative stress and reducing further inflammation.
Dr. Montgomery, in that example here, how many weeks was that? Do you know?
I don't know the number of weeks. I vaguely remember reading the caption. I didn't bring that over. It's about 4 weeks. And most of these examples I'm seeing is about 4 to 6 weeks with these chronic inflammatory conditions. There were a few where we saw, I think, 2 to 3 weeks, but most I'm seeing about 4 weeks is the amount of time that we're seeing these significant changes.
Okay. Good
question. So what are some physiological effects that has been documented with this? So here's a study that was done with 60 subjects, 22 males and 28 females, and they reported sleep disturbances and chronic muscle and joint pain. Something that we hear a lot in our clinic. They were divided for a month-long study. Both groups slept on conductive carbon fiber mattresses. Now, this was an interesting study because this is often not done when we do studies in medicine. One group was subjected to real grounding. This is the subject group, and the other group had fake or sham grounding. Now, sham studies, and generally speaking, is when a patient goes through a fake procedure. So there's a thought process that, hey, I'm getting something done. But what we do is we trick the process where that fake procedure doesn't really happen. Now, they've done, for instance, they've done situations where angioplasties, patient with chest pain, and you get one group, they go and they get an angioplasty, stick the groin, you float the catheter up and do the procedure. The other group, you stick the groin, they go to the hospital, lay on, get prepped and draped, get the groin struck, catheter flights up, whatever, but they don't float the balloon. And so they do a sham procedure. And then they found where after the sham procedure, the patient undergoes sham procedure has the same amount of chest pain or lack of chest pain as the patient undergoes the real procedure, which shows that, the real procedure isn't doing anything more than what the placebo will do. And that's what the placebo effect is real. So if I give you a pill and say, take this, it's going to get rid of your headache, a certain number of people will get better because they just got some pill and take a headache. So with the pharmacological trials, we typically do sham, which we call control or placebo, but also in therapeutic studies, we historically have not done a good job with shams. In some situations, there was a major study published in the New England Journal where they looked at the benefit of orthoscopic procedure where they go in and wash out the knee for people with arthritis. And they had done that historically. And then they started doing they did a study with a sham procedure and saw it made no difference between the sham and the real procedure. And so doing sham procedures is important because it really, especially when you're doing something that's therapeutic, that beyond taking a pill of some sort. So in this situation, they did a sham study. So the subjects had the real grounding and the control study, they probably had a sheet with a wire connected to it, but they probably didn't have the true grounding mechanism. So what they found was from baseline to the 4 weeks, they had about an 85, anywhere from a 74 to 100% improvement in reports of time to fall asleep, quality of sleep, wake feeling, muscle stiffness and pain, chronic back pain, and general well-being. So there's anywhere from 74 to 100% improvement among these subjects from baseline to treatment. But among the control subjects, there was anywhere from a 0 to 13% improvement from all of these symptoms. So you saw where there was a sham, there was a certain amount of placebo effect, perhaps 13% in some cases, but it was a big difference compared to when the individuals got the real treatment. So there's a big difference from the sham treatment to the real treatment. So that's something that we have to take into consideration, with that process. So we know that from sleep and chronic pain. here's a study where I alluded to earlier, where they actually measured the electrical charge going through the patient. And you can get these little voltage meters where you can measure the charge. So they did through these voltage meters, they measured electrical charge going through the left breast, the abdomen, and the left thigh. And they saw anywhere from about 1.2 to 1.3 root mean square volt at baseline. And when these patients were placed on a grounding pad, that went to around 0.01. And so you can see, directly that by simply grounding, you're reducing the charge that's traveling through the person's body. So, what we've seen so far, we've seen clinical findings, we've seen actually measurable findings where by just simply grounding an individual, we can reduce the amount of electrical charge that's passing through the body, and we can correlate that with a clinical improvement. So it's pretty sound information there. So what about blood flow and circulation? Well, as a cardiologist, I'm very interested in blood flow and circulation. So how does grounding affect that? Well, it reduces what's called blood viscosity and clumping. Now, viscosity is the thickness of something. So you can imagine pouring water out of a container versus pouring, say, molasses, out of a container, or pouring a very thick syrup or a thick ketchup. There's a thick ketchup or molasses in the wintertime, if you will, has an increased amount of viscosity. There's a thickness and a sludginess of the flow. We can already imagine that our blood flow, we want it less viscous. We want it less thick. We want it to flow through our vessels pretty easily. We do know there's data showing that moving to a plant-based diet reduces the viscosity of the blood and improves flow. And so it could be due to this antioxidant effect, among other things. So what can we say about grounding? Well, grounding has been shown to reduce blood viscosity and clumping. The red cells maintain separation due to the surface charge. So the electrical charge on the cells create a certain separation so the cells don't clump as easily, and they're allowed to flow through a single file flow. This is very important for capillary blood flow because the red cells have to go through in single file through your capillaries. Capillaries are very tiny vessels that branch throughout our body and throughout our tissues. And this is where the blood delivers nutrients, oxygen, food, and various other things, and take up waste from our tissue. So capillary blood flow is important, single file flow is important, and so on. So the circulatory benefits of earthing increase the health and recovery of injury. And so here's some images that show, here's baseline before. You see a lot of clumping of the red cells here. And after a certain amount of grounding, you see here less clumping of the red cells, thinner and more fluid. And you can look at the single file flow, and this is just a diagram showing single file flow of blood compared to the clumping of the blood. And here you can imagine if this was a capillary, we would have less efficient gas exchange at the capillary level, which is very important for the sake of tissue well-being and delivery of oxygen to these organs. So the last section, I'm going to share a few clinical examples with you, and I'm going to open the floor for questions. I think there are a number of questions open up from the galley here. Here's one situation where an individual had a poorly healing ulcer. And over time, this ulcer healed up more rapidly, and this and I think this is about 6 to 8 weeks of grounding. Here's another situation, and they used the grounding pad here. He had the arm wound, and then it healed up. And I think this is a bike runner here, and this is healing, I think probably within a week's time. So this is a more rapid healing, but it just shows more rapid wound healing and the like. Here's a image that shows improved circulation. Now you look on the left here, and this thermograms, and these thermograms are looking at flow. Look at this hand, and where this arrow is showing, poor circulation in this hand here, and it's not so bad here, but really bad here. And so this is the before, and then here's the after. now you can see the fingers, as opposed to you don't see the fingers here. Now you see the fingers there pretty significantly. More of a close-up here. You see more blood flow here in the fingers. Here it's cooler, and now there's more blood flow to the fingers. And this blood flow is so poor that it's about the same as the background until after grounding, you see significant blood flow. So the fingers are gone. This is like a circulatory amputation, if you will. And so it goes from circulatory amputation down to you seeing the fingers there. So very impressive. You can imagine that if you had the similar type of thing on someone's toes, and if they got an infection of some sort with poor circulation, that would predispose them to a very severe infection overall. So how to incorporate grounding. I'm going to share another quick little video with you that goes through some of this stuff to kind of give you a little bit of insight. So hold on one second.
Over the past few years, many people have become interested in something that we call earthing or grounding. So what is earthing? Earthing is essentially ridding our body from the excess electric charge buildup. Today, we have to consciously think about this process because we have been separated from the healing source of the earth because of the insulating shoes that we wear, because of the plastic that's around us, and because of the fact that we're not spending enough time outdoors and in contact with the earth and earth's elements. Our ancestors have never had to actually think about this because they were always in contact with the earth, either walking bare feet or sleeping on a material that were conductive, or wearing shoes that were conductive like leather, or touching water, touching trees, touching grass. They were constantly in contact with the earth. Today we have been completely separated. We sit behind computers long periods of time, and we're constantly in contact with electric and electronics. Fortunately, there are different methods that we can use to remedy this problem. Starting with using an earth mat. Using an earth mat when you are at home sitting behind a computer, or simply relaxing on the couch, and let your body ground. The second thing you can use is grounding shoes. Ground and earth yourself throughout the day. These shoes have been specifically made to create a contact between the bottom of your feet and the earth. As you walk, you're constantly discharging. A fantastic way to ground yourself as you're walking throughout the day. The third method is to use grounding sheets when you're sleeping. There are companies that produce sleeping bed sheets which are impregnated with silver linings and can be connected to the ground of your outlets. And as you sleep, you're constantly grounding your body. The other method is using a wristband. Simply use a grounding wristband as you're working on the computer, and you will be constantly grounding yourself. So these are the 4 methods I recommend to all of you. If you're young, old, if you have a child, you can use a grounding sheet on their bed. So start getting into.
So there you have it. We have. Oops, my microphone. Something funny here. All right, I think I'm back okay. So there you have the grounding information and the different methods. And we've started recently in our practice, I may have prescribed grounding protocols to a number of my patients. We got them on grounding sheets. I've written up some preliminary protocols on how to do this. We have a number of comments for I need to do this, connect Let's see here. Abdullah Shakir says, I need to do this. Sheila Lewis says, wow. Juicing helps free radicals too. That's correct, Shonda. Juicing, raw juice. If you did juicing and grounding, you'd be superwoman. Awesome topic, grounding. Who knew? So we do have a number of comments here. There's a couple of questions that I want to get to. Here's one about a pacemaker. Can a person with a pacemaker sleep safely with a grounding sheet? The answer is yes. I mean, just think of it this way. Can a person with a pacemaker walk safely barefoot? And so that's something that you can do very safely. And I think it would be beneficial and it wouldn't harm the pacemaker. And we have a number of pacemaker and defibrillator patients that we're recommending sleeping, grounding with grounding sheets. And grounding sheets are good. Pregnant divas, I think you can ground safely with pregnancy in the setting of pregnancy. Here's a question. Does grounding help mitigate the impacts of EMFs from, say, 5G? I think again, I didn't show any studies, validating that, but I think it certainly can do that. And I think the impact of EMF is very similar to the impact of other sources of either electrical interference or radiation. It can throw our circadian rhythm off. It can cause cell damage by means of creating free radicals. So it does a number of things that can harm us. And many of these things are offset by grounding. And, we did a great show maybe over a month ago on EMF. And, of course, a lot of eyebrows were raised because, we cannot control certain things in our environment. And I think one of the discussions we had that night was let's figure out an approach that we can use to improve our own internal environment. So that's certainly something that we can do. And so, yes, grounding can help with this. And if you integrate grounding in your life, but I want to emphasize a couple of things. Well, one in particular, even though we recommend grounding sheets, and that's helpful because I think there's a practical aspect to this, I really want to encourage our listeners and the members of our chat group to really work within your time of day to actually get out into nature and touch the ground, touch the trees, get dirty. Personally, I've just recently started, when I work out with a trainer, I work out, in back doors. That was actually before the COVID, nonsense came about, because, I was reading more about grounding and getting in earth. But I think in addition to grounding, being outdoors has many benefits that we've yet to kind of rediscover. So yes, there's a grounding aspect of it. Yes, there's being out in the sun, the vitamin D aspect of it, but there's, the fresh air component. There's a whole component of, walking under trees. It's all the tree bathing and that type of thing. So there are other benefits of the outdoors that I don't think we have, fully rediscovered or put our fingers on. So I think, even though you should get your grounding sheets and that's going to help, and we've shown good data, I think getting outdoors, changing your lifestyle. When we talk about lifestyle changes, it's literally that. It's a process of changing your lifestyle, changing how you live and how you behave on a day-to-day basis. And many of you may have very busy jobs and busy lives where it keeps you indoors near computers and EMFs. But, start to carve out time in your day, maybe the morning or evening, where you go and lay outside, whether you read a book or whatever the case is, get out in the dirt, get dirty, whether it's at a park or your backyard or whatever the case may be. So I think there's some benefits of being out in nature that we've yet to measure. So I think that's an important thing I want to emphasize.
And Dr. Montgomery, a couple of people have said a couple of things that kind of incorporate multiple aspects together. The gardening with your bare hands and also barefoot at the same time.
Okay.
You can do get it all done at once. And I also wanted to bring up, let's not forget about going to the ocean. So you're still grounding when you go to the beach and walk on the sand. That's why you feel a lot better when you go to the beach and walk on the sand. There are more negative ions close to the ocean. And so it helps to balance or remove a lot of the positive ions that the body has taken in from our city lives. So, grounding also with the earth, but also going to the ocean. And also, if you're in an area where you can't get in the water also is part of earthing and grounding, even though it's water.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. Yeah. The ocean, I think, has a big impact. And I really like your emphasis on gardening. Again, we touch on this. We probably need to do a show on gardening in and of itself. And so I'm gonna have to make a note of that. I like the whole aspect of gardening because it's multidimensional in a sense that, you're in the dirt. So there's the microbiome component. Like I said, your hands and your feet. Fresh air, sunshine. Plus, if you, I'm making a little bit of an assumption, but I shouldn't. When I say garden, I want you to be growing some of your own food. Now, we know we can't all have farms and major gardens, but even if you have potted plants on your back patio or your backyard, getting into the soil and then consuming some of the things that you're eating, that you're growing, I think creates that cycle, that old life cycle, that we're all removed from. So to the extent that you can bring that back, to your life, I think, can make a big difference and a big impact. Let's see. Can it help for those suffering with atherosclerosis? The answer is yes. Atherosclerosis is a chronic illness that is basically brought about through inflammation. We know inflammation gets better. We know circulation gets better, and through blood flow. And so reduced inflammation can also help reduce this. Now, again, I don't want us to just say, okay, grounding is the end all be all. And so what I'm hoping you're not going to be on your backyard lying down and you're with your bare feet, legs kicking up, eating your fried chicken sandwich. We want to put all this together. And so, that's a big part of that. So, be careful to maybe incorporate, not maybe, but be careful to incorporate all of the other things as well. Here's a question about, so very intrigued, does this information have any relation to varicose veins and blood flow to decrease varicose vein bulging? Also, I think it should help lower blood pressure. I mean, the answer is yes, and all of the above. Varicose veins are, part of a breakdown process in your venous circulation. And blood sludging has an impact on that. But also varicose veins, just a breakdown in the venous structure. Your valves wear out. That's an inflammatory process. And so certainly you can prevent that. Can you reverse it? I haven't seen any studies showing that, but grounding is something that's very low, risk, low side effects. So you can certainly do more of the grounding and eat a healthy diet. We've seen patients who go on detox, and we reverse venous insufficiency, where we document the venous insufficiency. We'll see varicose veins. We'll see lots of edema. When we put them on a nutritional detox, this goes away. So I would think that grounding could contribute to that healing process in addition to a nutritional cleanse as well. And I think it can also help with lowering blood pressure. Somebody else is talking about EMF. Shauna, was the EMF show was in July. After that, I started doing research, starting a new garden this month. I recall feeling my best when I was gardening. Yep, that's probably related to some of the things we're talking about today, but just also being out of nature. I mean, we focused on grounding, and we talked about studies that were done with grounding sheets and grounding pads, but being out of nature is multidimensional. And so there's a huge impact and things that, maybe subjects of future talks that are happening there.
There's actually some studies done on it, but in Japan, they call it Shurin-yoku, nature bathing. And it's been shown generally just by going into a forest or into nature, people can change their state of mind, and kind of reduce. And that's another thing that you didn't mention, but part of what happens when you're grounding also also applies to emotional balance. The Chinese medicine, which I've been getting into lately, I'm totally a beginner, so we would have to get someone more advanced, but it's very fascinating because 2,000 years ago, Chinese medicine already thought of the body as an electrical thing. Mm-hmm. And so these meridians are these kind of energy channels. They're not actually based in real physiology, but they're energy channels that the Chinese believe that life force travels through. And so when you're grounding, your feet are touching the ground and you're actually hitting the acupuncture points that correspond to your kidney, which in Chinese medicine, they consider like your root energy for good health in general. And so that's what I know about it from that perspective. So that in itself is interesting. And then when you get things like acupuncture, it's about then manipulating these energy channels to create balance in your emotions and in your overall health. So it all makes sense to me now when you start to put it together with like things that people already knew in other forms and practices. It makes sense that putting your feet on the ground would be beneficial to anyone, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a natural thing that we should do. And like I said, this is stuff that's been known many years ago, and I think only has been suppressed with modern technology and, sort of the capitalization of medicine, which is another topic. Abdullah says we're pretty comfortable with the COVID situation. Are you guys comfortable with the COVID situation? Are y'all shivering in your boots about COVID?
I mean, I would like to say something. I actually had a patient today who I just was listening more so than trying to convince her. But she brought in her young child who is afraid now to touch the floor and touch the ground because of the fear of COVID. And I think we've gone a little bit too far as far as fear mongering and it's creating a problem, because I mean, if you feel uncomfortable going out into society, you can still go outside in your yard. Just being outside itself is beneficial versus feeling like COVID is going to be a problem if you're in your own space. So, I just wanted to I saw that question and I wanted to convey that message that if you're uncomfortable, do what makes you comfortable, but know that you can't go outside and ground or, stay in a space, because being outside is not the problem. Actually, being outside is probably more helpful than being in the house with circulating stale air.
That and everything you said, Celeste, in addition to the fact that you have to remember that your mind is a very powerful thing. And so there's immunity that we create from like eating certain foods and all that stuff. But I remember speaking to this practitioner who also said that immunity is also about creating boundaries for emotional and spiritual and information. And so if you're constantly watching programming that is fear mongering or making you feel afraid and you're believing this in your mind, you can create things. So be wary of allowing yourself to go down the path of fear. So I think, taking precautions makes sense, but just like Celeste said, get outside every now and then.
Yeah, just tell the kid COVID lives on the ceiling, not the floor. You can get dirty. Can grounding improve gum health? I didn't see any specific studies, but if it improves overall body health and decrease inflammation, I would imagine it can. And so I can't say that, hey, I saw this study where it does. I wouldn't be surprised if someone has demonstrated or in the future will demonstrate that it does improve gum health. Let's see, how can grounding help in improving kidney health? Well, the kidney is a vascular structure. So if you improve circulation, you can improve kidney health. Kidney failure, most people in the United States with kidney failure have hypertension and diabetes, either both or one or the other. Of course, there are other causes, but these are common two causes. And these are things that contribute to atherosclerosis. And so I think grounding decreases inflammation, which has an anti-inflammatory and anti-atherosclerotic approach. So I would say yes, even though I haven't seen studies to show that. Again, all of these things are meant to be part of a total body healing. And so I don't want us to think of, when we talk about grounding, we talk about various other things. There was another talk earlier about cannabis. I need to question about that. We're going to do other shows on cannabis, by the way. I'm taking some modules on training on the endocannabinoid system. But think of these treatments as a global approach of improving your body's overall well-being. So you want to talk about the body's milieu being healthy. And therefore, if you have a healthy milieu, then it's going to be absent of disease. Disease or dysfunction cannot live within that milieu. And so think of it as that, as part of a whole spectrum of things that you're doing that's improving your overall well-being, not only physically, but as Asosa alluded to, your mind is going to be clear when you're doing these types of things. And so these things are all important. Can grounding, earthing work on concrete just as well as grass, water, and dirt? I think you can get electrons through concrete, but the question is just as well as. So I don't know if it's just as good. I think there's some extra benefits of being in the grass, the water, and the dirt beyond concrete. So although I say that you can ground and get electrons or ground, quote unquote, on concrete, I would imagine that there's some other benefits of being in the grass, the water, and the dirt, the microbiome aspect of it. So I don't want to just say, hey, just walk on concrete. It's the same thing. I don't know that to be true. And I would be inclined to say that there's a benefit of being in grass, water, and dirt over concrete.
And I agree with that. I've seen an article somewhere that did say that even in our homes, even if you have carpet or if you don't have carpet, to take off your shoes, you probably don't get the same amount, but you're getting something. So, when you're in the house, also take off your shoes and walk around barefoot. Of course, if it's safe.
And I prefer, you're talking about grounding sheets, but I actually prefer the grounding mats. I feel like they last longer, and you can use them in so many different ways. You can get small grounding mats where you can have it grounded and be working at your computer. And then you can get larger grounding mats that you can put on your mattress and stuff like that. Gotcha.
Chris West likes the comment about the power of your mind. Faye Park says, I use hydrochloric spray and beet propolis if I'm around people with COVID, and I take a preventive herb 3 times a week. Okay, that's great. And so, and someone else needs a natural way of getting rid of ants in the backyard. Well, why don't you just roll around among the ants, and then you can,
But for that question, she doesn't. I mean, of course, it would be nice to walk around the yard, but you don't have to move around. You can just stand. You can get a chair and sit in the chair, sit on the ground. You can sit on the ground, or you can sit in the chair and put your feet on the ground. So she doesn't have to have a whole yard, because that ant problem in Houston is major.
Yeah, I had some clients in Houston who were just like, nope.
So, and I'll talk about that. When I go out in the back and exercise, and I found the ant beds, and my trainer had me get on the ground and do different things. Okay, you run there, ant bed, move over here. And, I'm away from an ant bed, but then there's some ants that are kind of traveling about. So you may not be by a bed, and they'll and you just swat them off. You swat them off. And
some of them are fire ants. They don't swat off. They swarm.
Exactly.
I don't know, but I'm just saying personally.
I know because I've had a swarm.
And I may be more resistant to ants than the average person. So maybe see if you get out among them on a regular basis, they see you as one of them.
No.
So if you're a stranger, you're not out there on a regular basis, so then they bite you more aggressively. So I'm among the ants, you're among the wildlife, and so they see me as one of them, and so they don't bother me as much. So
another thing that I heard from I can't remember who I heard this from. is that grounding can actually help you overcome jet lag because it syncs you with where you are. So they were talking about flying to a whole other country. Like if I were to fly to South Africa right now and my body is just completely like, what's going on? But we will do usually the opposite of what we need to do. So we go into our hotel rooms and we just kind of like shut the door and try to get some rest kind of thing. Versus if you get to another country and you go find a park and you walk around for 20 minutes, your body will naturally sync with where you are and you won't feel jet lag.
Fascinating. So last few questions or comments. Does ground need to be warm? It feels better than the grass. Well, I like warm weather better than the cold weather. I'm having to deal with, think about how I'm going to deal with the winter coming. We don't have brutal winters here in Houston, but it still gets a little cold every now and then, but I'm still going to try to be committed. Does the grass need to be dry? I think wet may be better, but I've grounded in wet and dry.
Wet is more negative ions because that's the earth replenishing itself. So it is a little bit better.
We're getting some funny questions here. Take my roaches. Monica Jane, what about grounding from houseplants? I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe you get something. What do y'all think? Grounding from houseplants?
Does she mean just touching them?
Touching a houseplant?
Yes. Maybe you put them on the floor and they transmit from the floor. I think you need to get out and get dirty, Monica. Just stop trying to be such a city person. But anyway. Can I
make one more observation?
Sure.
I had an aha moment when I traveled last year because I have a grounding mat also, and had been reading about grounding a couple of years ago. So now it is something that kind of exists in my world. So when I traveled this time, I had an aha moment where I was talking to one of my friends who I met out of the country, and I said, Americans, we think that people walk around barefoot because they can't afford shoes. But you all are actually walking around barefoot before the health benefits. And I was told, yes. I mean, of course, there are people who live in certain tribes who may not have access to shoes. But a lot of people, especially when we went on hikes, they would take off their shoes because one, they could grasp probably better, but for the health benefits of touching the earth when we're walking through the woods. So I had that, aha, all of these years, I thought like everybody else, but now I'm realizing we don't know the benefit of kind of touching the earth. So we think everybody else doesn't, but a lot of people, a lot of cultures do still realize the benefits.
Yeah. We're the ones who are backwards. So, and the last comment, somebody else has a similar experience in terms of suppressing jet lag with travels, and the American thing is off. So anyway, as we close today, this has been very enlightening, and we're probably going to bring this subject back in the context of other things that we talk about. I'm giving some consideration of doing, say, a global conference type discussion where perhaps at the end of a period of time, we bring all these topics together. So stay tuned for that. But I've certainly enjoyed that. So as I close out with our group today, it's been, again, another wonderful hour. I've learned a lot studying this topic about grounding. And the neat thing about this is that it's something that's very simple to do. It's something that you can just simply go to a park and take your shoes off and go for a walk. You can start to integrate this into your life in a very simple way. And it's something that can have a big impact in terms of your health. You can, invest in a grounding pad or a grounding sheet, sleep on that every day. You can get a grounding mat or pad to sit at your desk every day. So these are some small things that you can do to start to integrate healthy habits in your life. And of course, we always advocate getting fresh air, sunshine, walking, exercise, moving about, eating a diet that's high in antioxidant foods, i.e. plant foods. And so all of these things are going to contribute to your overall well-being. And as you collect these good habits, these positive habits, it's going to impact you in a way that becomes immeasurable. So we'd like for you to, hopefully this is information that was beneficial to you. And as always, if this was helpful and you enjoyed this show, please subscribe, like, and share, especially share this. This topic needs to go viral. Share it with loved ones, share it with neighbors, friends, and have them subscribe and like as well. So we'd love to hear more from you regarding this topic. And until we see you next Monday, we want you to keep it fresh, natural, and live. Thanks for your attention.